We're going to talk about social media law and the internet next, right here on Due Process.
Major funding for Due Process is provided by Meade Lexus of Southfield and Meade Lexus of Lakeside, offering a large selection of new and pre-owned certified premium vehicles.
What do you get if you equip the standard Lexus ES more like some others in its class? Perhaps it's more a question of what you don't get. The Lexus ES Standard is nothing short of extraordinary.
And by WWJ News Radio 950, keeping you up to date with the latest news, traffic, weather, sports, and business information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Live, local, and committed to Michigan's future. News Radio 950, WWJ.
Thank you. I'm Henry Baskin. I'm your host for this edition of Due Process. Today we're going to talk about social media law. It involves a lot of subjects that we could cover. We're going to try and limit it to the time that we have. It's the internet. It's questions that you may want to ask, and we're going to try and answer. We have two of the best we could find, plus a visitor, Brian Wassam, who's with Honeyman Miller Schwartz and Cohn, who specializes in this area, and Robert Palmer. Bob is with the firm of Pitt McGee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to welcome you to Due Process. Also, we'll be joined later by Dean Rothschild, who's the Associate Professor of Law at Wayne State.
Thank you.
So thanks for coming down and spending some time. Let's go through the iterations here. Let's talk about the internet itself. I mean, and we're talking about Twitter. We're talking about the various methods that people can communicate through the sky. And if you could tell me, Brian, what is the area that you think is being used more and more as we go through the days here?
More and more, well, there's no question that the hot thing right now online is Facebook.
Facebook, okay.
Where this is, if you totaled up the number of people that use Facebook in the world, it would be the third largest country right now, behind China and India. That's how many people are involved. Facebook has even gotten to the point of popularity that it's challenging Google, which has been the king of the internet for as long as the internet has been around almost, as one of the most popular sites, one of the venues that people are using to get their information.
Okay, and the point is, and Bob, you know this, that once you put yourself on Facebook, once you commit to the internet information, it stays there seemingly forever.
Yeah, your world becomes an open book, and your pages just accumulate time after time. There are actually organizations out there that'll take the most recent stuff, and if you don't like it, move it to page 4 so that when someone looks you up, they may not find it because it's deeply buried.
Right, and people pay for the privilege, say on Google, if I checked you out on Google, Brian, you could have your name moved up.
Don't tell anybody what you found.
No, but I won't. But that's the problem. I mean, I assume you have a website.
Yeah, we do.
And you have a website.
Absolutely.
I refuse to have one for reasons that it holds you to a different standard. Should someone complain about your work product, and I say, well, I don't really need a website, but everybody seems to have a website. We also have things called LinkedIn. I don't know. Maybe you can explain what that is.
LinkedIn is just another social media site. It's geared more towards professionals, or at least the professional aspect of individuals' lives. It constitutes mostly your resume online, a short description of what you do professionally, and a few other social tools.
Okay, and can you change it once? Can you edit it once it's there?
Oh, absolutely. The whole idea of that site and any other site is to keep it fresh.
Yeah, not to jump around, but the other day there was a case of some note, and I was reading the story in the Detroit Free Press, and then it asked for comments. The comments were really salacious. I mean, really nasty comments. So they give you the choice of saying you want to eliminate this if it's personal, if it's whatever, and then you can click on it. I guess they remove it. But it's really interesting. I remember Governor Granholm told me, she said, Henry, I never read the comments. I never read the blogs or whatever they are, because there's always this negative stuff. Bunch of people sitting home just getting nuts and responding to it.
Well, actually, interestingly, on that line, there was a case that my partner and I were following. We had been involved early on, and the case got tried by Willie Gary, the gentleman who comes in, flies out. He actually took it over and lost. And so we were looking at the blog in one of the newspapers, and the people that started blogging on it were jurors.
Oh, really?
And you know, there's this idea what goes on in the jury box is hidden, yet in this particular case, at least people identifying themselves as jurors were talking about intricate parts of the case and what went on in the jury room. And I thought, wow, that's really intrusive. You know, some things that are traditionally thought of as being behind closed doors, here you got a jury talking about, well, we thought this about this person, we thought this about that person.
Well,
Well, and that's not limited to any one case. That's happening all across the country. Even here locally in Macomb County, just this past summer, it was in the international news that a 20-year-old girl on a jury posted that she was looking forward to finding the defendant guilty, and that caused her not only get kicked off the jury but punished.
Can you find these people, the people who make these comments and send these statements in? How do you find them? How do you know who they are?
Well, yeah, that's an ongoing battle now, is the privacy rights of these companies that control it. Because most of the people that are going to say something very outrageous are doing it anonymously.
Well,
Juror 1, for example.
Well,
or
sure,
something
and
along
that's the
those
problem.
lines.
That's why how these statements get online in the first place, the obnoxiousness, because people feel like they have this cloak of anonymity that
Right.
protects them. Nobody's ever going to find them because I'll make up some name, use some fake picture, and I can say whatever I want.
Right, and they do it.
And
Right.
they do.
And they do it.
It used to be a joke in the dating aspect. You know, you date online, you never know till you actually meet the person. Now the
right.
same thing's happening with regarding politics, religion, anything under the sun.
Well, how do you tell, you know, we did a show a long time ago, and one of the judges says, well, I make sure my kids use the internet only in my presence. But they don't do that. I mean, when you get a little older and you start doing Facebook and you start doing pictures of your friends doing things that you wouldn't do,
Correct.
it's there forever.
Sure.
How do you get it out of there? How do you get it off? How do you get it expunged, so we say in the law? Is there a way to do it?
Not a foolproof one. Not a foolproof one. We just heard a few minutes ago there are services out there you mentioned that will, for a fee, use whatever means are available to try and move the results down in
Right.
rankings on a search engine, for example.
But they're there.
They're there. but-
Statistically, nobody reads more than the first page.
well, that's
generally.
on a
So-
search engine result.
Yeah, on a search engine result. So the idea is to
Right.
get you on the 4th or 5th page, the bad stuff.
Sure, but then there are other sites that go out and archive this stuff beyond just a search engine. There are whole sites that are dedicated to copying what's on Twitter or any other type of site and republishing it somewhere else, archiving it somewhere for
They pick it up and put it on Deadspin and things such as that. So
Sure.
I mean,
anywhere. Yeah,
Sure.
so you see the day, of course, when all of us are going to be walking around with iPads or iterations of iPads and saying this is it.
Right.
And my question was always like, well, wait a minute. Someone came to my office and said, "Where's your library?" I said, "Well, we don't have a library. We're on the LawNet or Lexis or Westlaw."
Right.
And then I started thinking, what happened if this all blew up? Because we don't know where it is. As a matter of fact, some CEO said to me, he said, "Do you know where your money is?" I said, "Well, what money I have, I think it's over at Merrill Lynch." And he said, "How do you know? Have you ever seen it? Have you ever seen the bonds or things that you've purchased?" No, it's out there in cyberspace.
The cloud, as they call it.
Yeah.
The
It's all up in the
It's a
cloud.
number
It's
on
not
a
even.
screen.
It's not even in your computer anymore. Now it's in a third-party server off-site.
Who controls the cloud?
the big companies that own those servers that the information is stored on.
It's the Googles, it's the Bings, it's the Yahoos, the Alta Vistas, and
The
people
Facebooks.
like that.
Facebook.
And
Twitters.
Facebook.
Yep.
I mean, they own it. And what governs them? What protects us from them?
There are privacy laws, and
Yeah, but it's such a new area. They haven't really dealt with these types of problems yet.
You know, we're going to talk more about privacy laws because what about the fellow that was married to a woman who went into her account, had her password, and said, "Well, I'm going to look at all her emails." This was not uncommon in my life as a practitioner for people to say, "I went on my wife's email account, and guess what? I have, and here's a printout." Now this man is charged with a crime. I'm not certain what the crime is, but he's charged with the crime by the Oakland County prosecutor
Sure.
and the sheriff.
sure.
Right.
Is there any way that you think that someone who's married to a person doesn't have the right to access their account?
Well, Michigan has a general privacy law in terms of right to privacy, but it's a reasonable expectation test. We come across it with employers as well as husband-wife. For example, you apply for a job and the HR person wants to look at your Facebook page to see who you really are. If they just go on and you've got open access, it's kind of, you're at their mercy. But if you set privacy controls and they circumvent that, then they can be held responsible under a breach of right to privacy type theory.
If I go on Facebook, I can't set privacy controls. I mean, it's there.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely.
you can't. They're there to be set.
Sure you can.
They are there to be
Oh yeah,
set.
but one of the problems with that is that Facebook in particular, and I understand this from my 21-year-old daughter as opposed
Right.
to any other technical source, but every time Facebook does a new imagination, they update their software. It resets the privacy. So unless you reset every time you do that, your privacy controls go away, and you may not even know they're gone away.
You need to be vigilant.
Well,
That's the bottom line.
Well, yeah. Are we going to say, well, we're going to sort of frame this intrusion into this woman's account the same as we would with recording a telephone conversation and things such as that?
Well, you know, Henry, that example raises the fundamental point of what we call social media law, because there's nothing really better to call it. But social media law is like the law of the horse, if you've heard that phrase. There is no body of law about horses, but a horse owner will intersect any one of a number of areas of laws: gambling, nuisance, UCC, sales, depending on what they're doing with that horse. The internet, social media is like that. There aren't very many specific rules, laws, principles of law on the internet that apply to the internet that are that much different from any other area of life. It's taking those doctrines, those fundamental things that we all learned in law school and already understand, and applying it to these new facts.
Yeah.
Let me harpen back to
Sure.
the telephone. All right? When the telephone first came in, people were eavesdropping. As part of the Omnibus Crime Control Act, a general anti-crime type act, they built in violations when you eavesdrop on somebody else's telephone call. If you are part of the conversation, you can tape it, you can listen to it. If you're not and you tape two other people, it's a crime. It violates federal law, it violates state law. And I would think the law that's going to develop is going to mirror that.
And that, in another case point, a more recent statute, the Stored Communications Act. This is something that was adopted in the very infancy of the internet to protect the privacy of email under some circumstances.
Right.
Now we have Facebook messages that are private messages sent between Facebook users.
Are they private?
So, well, that's a brand new area. There are courts that have said yes, but that hasn't been addressed very often. It's a brand new field.
Here's the problem. I mean, number one problem is I was in Europe a few years ago, and I'm watching this Google thing, searching Paris, as a matter of fact. And then it came here, and then I said, whoa, here's my house. And that's where it's located.
Google Earth, where you can
Google
actually
Earth.
see a satellite picture of it.
Then Google went around and started making pictures of all the people walking the streets of
Street view,
Paraguay.
yeah.
And I'm
Right.
thinking, what gives them the right? And then they post it, and then you can find it. I mean, for law enforcement, it's a great thing.
Sure.
But I don't quite understand how I gave up my right to privacy to Google to walk around and say, we're going to take a picture of your house, take a picture of your car, take a picture of you, and make it available to anyone who wants to do it.
Well, the problem is you're dealing with a reasonable expectation of privacy standard. So therefore, you view it in light of the technology that's around. Since that technology is so prevalent now, the people looking at it are going to think, well, you know, it's reasonable because there's so much of it there. It's a moving target, what is reasonable. And the more the technology is out there, the more that the intrusiveness, unfortunately, becomes reasonable.
Well,
Plus, the technology is moving faster than the law can catch up.
That's for sure, and it's a logical extension of the rules we already have. You for years have been able to take a picture with your camera outside anywhere you want because it's out in the public. There's no reasonable expectation of privacy. When Google does that and takes pictures everywhere all at once, well, we say this is this brand new terrible thing, but it's an extension of the principle we already have.
Okay,
Sure.
well, do I have the
Scary.
right, if Lady Gaga goes on Twitter, and do I have the right to take that down and republish it?
The Twitter example specifically, the whole business model of Twitter is encouraged for people to retweet or repeat what other people have said, to
Right.
So
So
in
you
that
could do it.
example, yes, you probably could. But Twitter raises interesting examples. There again, the same laws apply in a different field. Courtney Love, the singer, for example, is
Right.
going on trial next month, I think it is, for defamation based on statements that she made on Twitter. So those
Okay.
same rules still apply in the new forum.
Well, it could be defamation on Facebook too.
Sure. Well, it's kind of like you look at what is the original message, and then you work your way back. Obviously, if the original message is a violation, then you're republishing a violation. If the original message is not a violation, not defamatory, not a untrue statement, then as you go down the line, you're not.
Yeah, well, you have to verify that it's true if you
Sure.
keep using it. We're going to take a break and come back and meet our professor from Wayne State University right after this.
Great.
Legal referrals and more information on this and other related topics are available on our website at www.dueprocess.tv. There you'll find information on today's program, helpful hints to legal issues, support materials, and lawyer referrals. You can also stream previous episodes of Due Process.
Thank you. We're back on Due Process talking about social media, the internet, and all the attendant problems and the privacy factors. And we're going to be joined by Professor Rothschild, who is from Associate Dean of Wayne State University. Professor, welcome to Due Process. Thank you.
Pleased to be here.
You've heard the discussion, hopefully, between these two gentlemen, the rights and the abrogation of your rights but through the use of the internet.
Yeah, and I agree with everything I've heard. Some issues are brand new. The courts are just dealing with them and trying to work out the rules in new situations. In other cases, it's really the same old rules, but being applied to situations that haven't come up before.
Well, it's interesting because, as Brian said, it's a moving. It keeps growing and growing and growing. Different iterations of the same thing. Something up in the big cloud. How do you keep up with that?
It's difficult to keep up with. The companies, Facebook, Google, keep moving, keep changing, keep trying out new business models, and sometimes they are successful. Sometimes they're not. There was a recent new effort by Google that got it into a lot of trouble called Google Buzz.
Right. They just settled that case, I think.
Yeah, there's been a settlement. This was a service that Google initiated in March of 2010. It was an effort to get Google into the social networking space, but they did it in a way that was not respectful of people's privacy. They made up contact lists for people, friends lists for people who subscribe to the service that consisted of those people who you contacted the most using Gmail and using chat. And the lists of those people were made public on your Google profile without, a lot of people thought, sufficient disclosure. So you might be very surprised to see these people who you email with but are not really your friends being listed on your profile as part of your contact list.
As your friends. I see. One of the things that we run into a lot are the employees at large firms or small firms doing their shopping on the internet, and they're on Facebook and they're spending this time. Is there any way you can control the use of the internet at your office or at someone's office? Are there rules and regulations that say if you do it, you're fired?
Oh, sure. Employers have rules that govern use of email, use of the internet by their employees. There have been a lot of disputes that have arisen because of them. Sometimes there are official rules in employee handbooks that are very strict about employee use of the internet, but in practice the rules are not applied so strictly, so there's a question about which set of rules applies. The courts don't like to allow employers to impose arbitrary rules on employees, so there's a whole host of issues that have come out of that.
Well, the problem I have, and the gentleman here can chime in too, is that if you, someone has to go back and say, we checked your email usage and you're shopping online or you're using Facebook. Now, are they not entitled, the employee entitled, to some privacy? Or do they surrender all of their constitutional rights when they take the job?
Pretty much is the answer. If it's a company computer, absent, for example, that you're, first of all, if it's a company's computer, they can set the rules. And if the rules are no use other than work use, as long as they apply it to everybody, they can do that.
Can they go back and check in
Sure.
your history of what you've
Absolutely.
done?
Absolutely.
It's their computers, their computer system. That's another area where the ease of doing something online in the employee's mind often masks the fact that you're using somebody else's property to do it.
Most companies have a policy, at least that I've seen. I practice primarily in the area of employees' rights, not employers' rights. And looking at it from the employee's perspective, most companies have an incidental use policy. Just like the telephone, you can make some calls, you can use some things. So drawing that line as to whether an hour and a half on eBay is an incidental use.
Oh, right. Well, Professor, I just want to ask you, if you have promulgated any rules for corporations, have they come to you and said, tell us what kind of rules we can impose?
Well, it's really more of a business decision than a legal decision.
And it's a valid business decision, as far as we know right now.
Sure. Employers have a right to control what their employees do with their time in the workplace. But there has to be a balance, recognizing that people spend a lot of their day at their office, and sometimes in order to just keep up with life, they have to do some of their personal communications while at work. So employers need to provide a policy that employees can reasonably comply with and still get their work done and still live their lives.
And Henry, I come at this discussion from the perspective of usually representing employers, and I've been involved myself in drafting these social media policies. So it is a business decision by and large, and businesses take different approaches to this. They need to be careful. They need to protect themselves from what employees are doing online, but some are more lenient, more understanding, more agreeable to personal use than others.
The two golden rules. First rule.
I just want to thank the professor. I just want to thank you so much for dropping in on us and letting us speak to you about this. It's a field that's going to grow and grow as far as the law and as far as law schools are concerned. I can see it. I can see many classes in social media law. But thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. You know, I liken the use of the computer or the internet to the use of the telephone.
That's the closest analogy to draw. When it came in, it's just you have a lot of the same issues.
Are they not able to get a call from the school that says, hey, your child is sick? I mean, that would make sense if the company said, hey, you can take that call or make that call. But do they have the right to listen in on the conversations?
Well, there was there was a case involving SWAT teams, and in this particular case, they were all given pagers, and they used these pagers to respond to SWAT situations.
You're not talking about the Kilpatrick case.
No, I'm not. This was out, I think, in California. In that particular case, they had to use the pagers, and one guy had way more pager use than anybody else, and so when they checked it out, he was using it with his wife, his girlfriend, possibly, whatever. And he raised that you had no right to basically look at my pager use. You gave it to me to use work-wise, it's confidential. And they said, no, the company gave you that device. They had a reasonable reason to want to look at it, some reasonable articulable reason, and therefore they're looking at the pager and diagramming it and taking it apart was appropriate.
Is this the Quan case?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's disputes like that.
Thank you. I was searching for the name. Thank you.
Just made it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it's disputes like that that end up shaping the law for everyone else.
It's going to shape the law. Brian, we just have a couple seconds left here, but you guys are on the wrong side, different sides. Not the wrong side. There's no wrong or right.
He's on the wrong side.
Yeah, but you represent employers, and a lot of employers. You represent employees. Where do you see this going? Is there a happy medium? Is there something we can do to say, well, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do for sure? Or are we just going to wait for Supreme Court to make decisions that will shape the future of social media?
If you're waiting for the Supreme Court, you're waiting too long. By the time a social media issue makes it to the Supreme Court, that social media will probably be extinct.
Right.
The courts move too slow to draw the boundaries.
I agree, but I don't think it's as confusing and scary as one might think. It's just the same reasonable standard. If you're spending an hour on your computer doing personal stuff, it's too long. If you're putting pictures on there that you don't want people to see, you're making a mistake.
Okay, and you said the average age of a Facebook user
The
was
average age of a Facebook user is 37.
37.
Everybody thinks, and 25% of social media users are between 35 and 44. It's
Okay.
not kids only.
Sure, and the fastest growing segment is actually senior citizen women.
So what do we want to tell these people?
Be smart.
Be smart.
Just remember
your
that
head.
it's a water cooler conversation that the whole world gets to listen to.
It's a water cooler conversation. It doesn't end with the empty bottle. It just keeps on going forever.
That's right.
I want to thank you guys for coming down.
Sure,
I
it was
really
a pleasure.
appreciate it. I hope this is helpful to you.
Major funding for Due Process is provided by Mead Lexus of Southfield and Mead Lexus of Lakeside, offering a large selection of new and pre-owned certified premium vehicles.
What do you get if you equip the standard Lexus ES more like some others in its class? Perhaps it's more a question of what you don't get. The Lexus ES Standard is nothing short of extraordinary.
And by WWJ News Radio 950, keeping you up to date with the latest news, traffic, weather, sports, and business information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Live, local, and committed to Michigan's future. News Radio 950, WWJ.